Hello, everyone. This is Jeanette Schliege with VGA, and I am here with Marian Burk Wood, one of our conference speakers. And I was wondering, Marian, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. First, thank you so much for having me back as a VGA conference speaker. I was born and brought up in the Bronx, and an identical twin, and I'm the daughter of a twin. But what's interesting was my mother didn't believe that I was identical. She always told my sister and me we were fraternal. Well, fast forward to about 4 years ago when I was at a Roots Tech conference and I bought a DNA kit for my sister to test because I had already tested.
Mhm.
And we looked at the results and we are 100% identical. Like my sister always said, and my mother didn't say.
That is fantastic. Which company did you use to compare your DNA to each other?
Well, I had tested with Ancestry and she tested with 23andMe. And then we uploaded to GEDmatch
Hmm.
and looked very carefully. And we are identical. I even asked an expert friend to double check. And yes, we are identical. So that my mother was wrong and my sister was right all those years.
I love it. That's so great. Well, how did you get started in genealogy research? Was there some sort of event that kind of got you hooked into it?
Yes, my mother's first cousin asked me what sounds like a really simple question. She was filling out a family group sheet and she wanted to know more about my father and his father. And I knew a lot about my father, but I knew almost nothing about his father. So that started me on a quest because he had died years before I was born. And in fact, I didn't know where and when he died. It took me 5 years to find out where and when. And I was really shocked to discover where he was and why it was that he didn't die at home. And I'll give you a quick spoiler alert. You know, my family didn't own a car. Nobody in the family owned cars. We were New York City people. We were Big
Hmm.
Apple folks. We used the subway and the buses. And I knew that that grandfather never drove. So eventually, I called the New York City Department of Records and I threw myself on their mercy. And I said, I haven't found him. And I now have an obit. So I knew a rough date. And the wonderful gentleman at the other end said, I'm going to give you a hint. I can't tell you this, but I'm going to give you a hint that you should actually look in other jurisdictions to find out where he died. Like maybe try a place like Washington, D.C. Maybe. I couldn't imagine what he was doing there, but I did try DC. And when I got the death certificate, I discovered that he had died at the house of his sister and brother-in-law. And that opened up more cousin information to me
Wow. How did the person in New York know to check DC?
because the body had been transported back to New York for
Mm,
burial. And there was a note. There
wow.
was some kind of a burial record. Of course, I couldn't see it, and the
Right.
cemetery didn't see what this guy saw, but they had to apparently register with the Department of Health or whoever it was. And he was kind enough to give me that off the cuff kind
Yeah.
of hint. I was very grateful.
I love that. That's such a great story. And I bet you felt so relieved when you finally had solved that, puzzle to find out after all those years.
5 years, but then it opened the way for me to meet the cousins who were in DC who I hadn't been aware of. So you know I was hooked by then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for the VGA conference coming up next month, the presentation you're going to be sharing is Get Ready for the 1950 US Census, a treasure trove of family history. Can you give us a little overview of what your session is going to be about?
The 1950 US Census is the first time my parents appear as a married couple. So you know the very first thing I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be sharing a 3-step process for looking for ancestors before the 1950 census is indexed. because when it's released on April 1, 2022, it'll just be microfilm pages, no index, no transcription, no nothing. We're going to have to know where to look for our ancestors, which means having an address and then transforming the address into an enumeration district. And I'm going to show the process soup to nuts and describe what's so exciting about the questions in the 1950 census, because 1/5 of the US population were asked sample questions. Those are extra questions that will give us insight into the family's income, for example, and some other really useful data for us to know more about our ancestors.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And going to be a presentation that everybody that has anyone that lives in the United States in the 1950 that they're going to want to watch, because this is an exciting time coming up in just a couple months. What are we, about 5 months away now or something? Not
Yes.
that far away, maybe six, whatever, 5 6 months. We're close to that release, and I'm sure everybody's already starting to get or wonder how to prepare for it. So I'm sure your presentation is gonna help us all out, and we appreciate that. So thank you so much, Marian, for letting us to get to know you a little bit better, and we will see you at the conference.
See you in November.
Thank you.